This is the business of sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with my colleagues Damian, Sassower, and Vanessa Perdomo. Coming up on the show, we'll hear from Masai Ujiri. He is vice chairman and president of the NBA's Toronto Raptors. He's also co-founder of Giants of Africa. We'll talk to him about that initiative and how he's using the game of basketball to empower young people in Africa.
We started a basketball camp 22 years ago, and it was started just from the basic teaching of kids basic fundamentals of the game. 50 kids in Nigeria. I modeled it out of Basketball Without Borders.
All that and more is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, we wanted to check in on some of the legal headlines in the world of sports lately. Congress is still mulling over compensation for college players. And in the pros, we saw the MLB make the choice to make Pete Rose and several others eligible for the Hall of Fame. Here to go over that and more is friend of the show, Marty Edel. He is co-chair of Goulston Storrs Sports Law Practice and adjunct professor of law at Columbia University. Marty, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports. Oh my goodness, he's even more handsome in person than he is on the phone. Marty, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, my friend.
Michael, so nice for you to have me here. Damian, it's good to associate a face with a voice.
You might have regrets after you've seen this face that I got.
Be careful.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. There's a prospective House settlement. The House and the NCAA settlement, it hangs in the balance. They've extended a deadline. It was supposed to be June 6th, and it is now June 27th. Now, that's important, Marty, as you mentioned, for two reasons. One, it gives more time for an appeal, but more importantly, it pushes the timeline for a potential resolution even closer to July 1st.
So you're absolutely right, Michael. The House settlement is far from clear at this point. There are a number of wild cards going on, in particular the roster size of college teams. The judge has expressed concern about what will happen if the NCAA and the various conferences fix the rosters at a particular size. What will that mean for some members of the class? Will they be thrown off the team? Will they have the ability to be guaranteed a roster spot? And there are lots of ideas coming up to deal with that. What's really important to note about the House settlement is what it does not cover. It does not cover Title VII concerns or Title IX concerns. It does not cover prospective antitrust claims. Let me give you an example. Prospectively, the House settlement provides that conferences will pay up to 20% of revenues to student athletes. Why 20%? Why not 22%, 25%? This is an antitrust lawsuit waiting to happen. It restrains competition for those dollars. And the third area that it does not cover is something that we have talked about repeatedly before, which is, are student athletes employees? They're going to be paid a percentage of revenues. They're going to get their scholarships. They're going to get their NIL dollars. Sort of looks like, smells like, feels like an employee. And what will happen then?
Settlement's touchstones, they remain unchanged, right? Starting the 1st of July, I believe NCAA schools can share as much as $20.5 million in revenue with their athletes. And former athletes who played between 2016 and 24 will be paid, $2.8 billion with a B in back payments if the settlement is actually approved. But it's this roster limit that I'm struggling with. I mean, talk to us a little bit about how they put the toothpaste back in the bottle, as it were,
So I think you hit the nail on the head here, Damian. You can't go backwards, plain and simple. What do you do with rosters? Well, now there's no longer a cap on the number of scholarships, for example, to be awarded. So schools can continue to award scholarships. Will they have the money for more than, let's say, 105? Maybe not. So maybe that's how they're trying to link rosters with scholarships. But ultimately, this should be a resolvable problem. And both the players and the NCAA have proposed various solutions for the roster situation. Keep all members of the class, for example, guarantee them a roster spot is one. Second is create a wild card number of roster entries on a going forward basis.
One of the things, like on the roster limit thing, that I'm really struggling with, as well as a former athlete myself and someone who plays a sport that really feels like it was going to be affected by this as a women's soccer player. You know, our scholarships were divvied up in between, you know, each other, and we didn't really, not a lot of people have full rides. So in a sport like football, where they can afford 105 scholarships, feels like maybe they don't get affected. But what about the non-revenue generating sports like women's soccer, baseball, track and field?
So if I can expand your question a little bit and then take it apart. So we have the non-roster, sports, the non-revenue sports, and then we also have the dichotomy between men's and women's sports, which we also can touch on if you'd like. So, for example, in the difference between revenue and non-revenue sports, schools can continue to have rosters. They can continue to award scholarships now without limit. They still have to find some money, according to this, to pay athletes for the use of the athletes' time and energy in even these non-roster sports. How this is going to come about is far from clear. There's some talk that Judge Wilkins will appoint a magistrate judge to oversee enforcement. Maybe she appoints instead a tribunal to look at this. There are lots of ways of looking at it. But they haven't dug into the details on the non-revenue, because the revenue sports take such a high precedence for most colleges and universities.
I want to open up a whole brand new jar here. It goes something to what you wrote about, by the way, in Sportico about gambling, but it goes to the MLB decided, hey, you know what? Pete Rose, 15 others, including shoeless Joe Jackson, you know what? Well, okay, we'll make him eligible for the Hall of Fame posthumously. And I know there are purists out there that are saying, oh, it should never happen because Pete Rose gambled on this and that, whatever. Others are saying just the opposite. Can you break it down for us?
I can try, at least. So we have a really interesting situation. If you go back to 1919 and the Black Sox, and now that you can see me, you know I was around then.
I was the bat boy for you back then.
Now I remember how I know. So with the Black Sox came the start of having a commissioner for sports. Kennesaw Mountain Landis was the first commissioner in any sport, and he became the first commissioner in baseball. He promptly threw out 8 players from the Chicago White Sox team for baseball for life, including shoeless Joe Jackson. Baseball then had this epiphany. Gee, if somebody bets, we're going to throw them out for life. The reasons are pretty clear. We don't want players to game what's there. We want fans to think that this is not, for instance, like WWE. We want to have a clean contest to attract fans. And with the nascent media attention coming on, they wanted media dollars. Why would media pay huge dollars if they knew the outcome before it started? So baseball was in the forefront and said, you're out. This coincided, of course, with the feeling in the country where most states had laws which prohibited gambling. Not so in the other leagues, though. So you look at football. I'll jump forward to about 1961. Paul Hornung, a star running back for the Green Bay Packers. Alex Karras, a star defensive tackle for the Detroit Lions, caught gambling. Yep. Tossed out initially for life, and then later changed to a single year. Hockey, same thing,
Right.
1 year.
Right. Back then, the amount of revenue that's generated from legalized sports gambling wasn't $100.9 billion per year. So this is a big money issue. And, my curiosity, Marty, and I wonder if you could opine on this, is some of the people out there, the ones who physically enhancing drugs and PED, all that kind of stuff, this opens the door for, some of that to get challenged as well. But, I believe sports betting is a different animal than PEDs. What's the precedent that's being set here in your opinion?
Again, two tracks going. So one is sports gambling. Sports gambling is now legal in 38 states plus the District of Columbia.
Stokes fan engagement, it's good for the game.
How many people engage in FanDuels or DraftKings? I used to tell my class, by a show of hands, how many of you are participating in that? They raised their hand. I said, well, I guess I have to report you to the authorities because it's illegal. After they got over the shock of that.
You're right.
But now you're right. We're spending as a nation well over $100 billion annually in sports gambling.
People can bet on if someone gets a touchdown. They can bet on specific players, right? So how come they can't get a piece of that pie? Obviously not betting on themselves, but shouldn't they get something from other people trying to bet on them?
Well, again, if you come to the conclusion that these are not outcome determinative and won't affect, therefore, the way fans and the media look at sports, maybe you can permit something like that. I think it makes sense as a rule, at least right now, to say you cannot bet on a sport in which you can bet on sports in which you do not participate, but not on sports in which you participate. Is this really any different, though, than your old-time gamblers who told players, we'll break your kneecaps unless you throw the game?
Right.
That's not what we want as fans viewing it or as the media broadcasting sports. You want a free and open game. And the more you get away from that, the more problems you have there. It's a constantly evolving problem.
By the way, you all missed the biggest prop bet was on Alex Karras that he was going to star in Webster years down the road. I came through on that. Marty Edel. I love that show. Our thanks to Marty Edel for joining us. He's co-chair of Goulston and Storrs Sports Law Practice, an adjunct professor of law at Columbia University. Up next, our very own Vanessa Perdomo speaks with the CEO and Secretary General of the U.S. Soccer Federation, J.T. Batson. For my colleagues Damian, Sassower, and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr. Our very own Vanessa Perdomo is our resident soccer expert. She's launching a new series focused on some of the big names in the sport in the run-up to the U.S. hosting the FIFA World Cup in 2026. In her latest conversation, she spoke with J.T. Batson. He's CEO and Secretary General of the U.S. Soccer Federation. Let's listen in on that conversation as they look ahead to the World Cup and to next weekend's Concacaf Gold Cup.
So we are 1 year out from the start of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I am so excited. How quickly has this come for you? Is it right around the corner for you, do you feel, or is it still a long ways away?
The way the soccer calendar works, there's always something right on your doorstep. And of course, the Men's World Cup being here in 2026 is a huge moment. We're all incredibly excited about it. We joke a lot that the soccer calendar never sleeps. And so, the team's up for it. Our organization's up for it. Our fans are up for it. And we're certainly excited.
It definitely is constantly populating the soccer calendar for sure. So, JT, you came into the Federation just a few months ahead of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, and that must have been quite a busy first few months, but now you're in it, you're in tune with the job and everything. So how is this year going to be for you, different for you in going into 2026 than it was in 2022?
Well, going into the 2022 World Cup, I joined in September. Obviously, the World Cup was a few months after that. Those plans are long baked before 2 months out. And so, as you think about the prep for next summer, Matt Crocker, our sporting director, working with Mauricio Pochettino and staff, planning out everything going into next summer. So that work is very actively going on, and everything from where's the team based during the World Cup to what are the games you're playing to prepare to all of the sort of logistics and everything we're doing, off the field as well to take, full advantage of this unique moment. So, I was in Qatar, I was able to benefit from all of that work. Whereas in this instance, obviously we're all knee deep in it. And with the World Cup being here, presents all sorts of new opportunities for us to really seize the moment and help transform what soccer looks like in this country.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's so much. This is going to be the biggest moment for soccer, really, in the U.S. ever, right? Because the last time we hosted a World Cup, 1994, we hosted a World Cup. The MLS was on the cusp of being created because of that World Cup, right? So how is this going to be different because of everything that's on the line, the MLS, NWSL, everything that can benefit from this time?
In 94, we had aspirations of being a soccer country. You mentioned Major League Soccer was sort of born out of the 94 World Cup. The 1994 World Cup is still the most attended World Cup in history, even though there's only 24 teams. So, imagine 48 teams in next summer is going to shatter that record. But I think as you think about where we are now, we are a soccer country. There are over 100 million fans of the men's and women's national teams. There are more soccer games available to watch on television in the U.S. than any other country in the world. You've got tens of millions of people playing. You've got an incredible amount of commercial investment, success of Major League Soccer, NWSL, USL, and sort of all forms of soccer in this country. So, conceivably, maybe 2026 is when the rest of the world learns that we're a soccer country. And so, for us, the journey from 94 to 2026 has been one of incredible growth and real maturity of the soccer market. And it's around how do we take that to the next level?
In your opinion, how do we show the rest of the world that we are a soccer country since we are one of the hosts of the 2026 World Cup?
Well, first and foremost, we have to have a team that everyone believes in, and we have to have a team that after every game, you're proud of their fight, you're proud of their performance, and you're excited about the next opportunity for them to go win. One of the things that was very true in Qatar was colleagues from around the world kept coming up to me and some of my colleagues at U.S. Soccer saying, "Wow, this U.S. team, look at you guys," and they weren't expecting that. I think of course, we got to perform on the field, but I think where our big opportunity is for the millions of people that come to America to experience the tens of millions of fans here in America and their passion, their love, their knowledge for the game, and helping them really appreciate how deep and broad the sort of love of soccer is in this country. And of course, benefiting from the amazing facilities and infrastructure and restaurants and hotels and everything we have in the U.S. that makes it such an amazing place to witness a global sporting spectacle.
Are there any metrics in terms of, growing the game percentage-wise by fans or viewership or in terms of youth participation that you're looking at that it stands now to where you want it to grow over the next year?
So overall, U.S. Soccer believes that we exist in service to soccer. Our job is to support those who are bringing soccer to life in communities all across the country. And those folks have three shared ambitions. They want soccer everywhere. So they want everyone in the country to be able to experience the joy of soccer. They want our teams to win. So they, of course, want our national teams. They want our pro clubs to win on the world stage. And they want to maximize investment in the sport at all levels. So that's commercial investment, philanthropic investment, government support, private capital coming in. And so as we think about the opportunity of Club World Cup in 25, Men's World Cup in 26, Olympics in 28, and us being the sole bidders for the Women's World Cup in 2031, there's a really unique opportunity for us to move the needle across all three of those shared ambitions. And as we think about, what that means, we launched the Soccer Forward Foundation to drive more access to soccer, to make it to where everyone in this country can walk, ride their bike, or take public transit to a safe place to play soccer, to make it to where soccer is in every school in this country. We've launched the U.S. Way, which is our comprehensive strategy to ensure our teams win, to focus on all levels of the game, to set our teams up for success in these big moments. And of course, from an investment standpoint, think about the investment that's going on at all levels of our game, whether it's infrastructure, building facilities, our new Arthur M. Blank U.S. Soccer National Training Center in Atlanta, almost a 200-acre project, first ever national training center and headquarters for U.S. Soccer. It'll be the best in the world when it opens next year, to the investments in the professional leagues, the investments in all of the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure that U.S. Soccer is doing around supporting the rest of the soccer ecosystem. So this is a very, very, very important time for us to take advantage of the growth of our sport, the momentum and the focus. And if anything, we are thinking about using 26, 28, 31, sort of forcing functions to get people to take big, bold steps forward around transforming what the sport can look like.
And is that looking to get investors and the stakeholders in leagues and things like that? Are those the people you're looking at to take big swings and big, things like you just said? Like, I mean, you guys obviously had a lot of investment this year. The Ken Griffin donation made a lot of headlines this year, and helping with Mauricio Pochettino getting hired as the U.S. men's national team coach. And then obviously, like you mentioned, Arthur Blank in that training facility, Michelle Kang, big donations. Talk to us a little bit about those specific people and the investors that you're looking at to help grow and the role that philanthropy plays for U.S. soccer.
So when you think about U.S. soccer, one analogy for folks who are listening in terms of our sort of businesses, we've got almost like a pro sports part of our business. Those are our national teams. We have 27 national teams, most known for our men's and women's national teams, but those sort of resemble a pro sports organization. We have a trade association type of business. Think of coaching education, referee certification and licensing, promoting a health and safe and positive ecosystem type of work. And we have the impact arm, Soccer Forward Foundation, which is around accessibility and ensuring our game can be everywhere for everyone. And so as you think about investment, those come in different forms depending on which of those businesses, your business lines you're talking about. And as you think about U.S. Soccer, the organization, we've had incredible success over the last 2 years launching our commercial rights business. We have been able to partner with some of the great brands in the world, from Nike to Bank of America to Coca-Cola to Visa to and to where we have grown revenue at a really impressive clip over the last couple of years from people who believe in our vision, believe in our mission, and believe in the opportunity to use soccer as a force for good in their relationship with U.S. soccer to bring that to life. We also have had incredible success from a philanthropic standpoint. You mentioned the support from Arthur M. Blank, from Michelle Kang, from Ken Griffin, and others who believe that U.S. soccer can go do big things. Unlike our peers, U.S. soccer around the world, U.S. soccer receives no government support directly. And so, philanthropic support is a unique American thing. And it's something that, we want to embrace as we are trying to go be best in the world. And so why not use what America's great at? And so we've been very fortunate to have people who believe in our overall mission and believe in our ability to go do big things and being great stewards of their money. And so we're excited about what that looks like. Then more broadly, we care about what's the health of the soccer ecosystem in this country. Are investors stepping up to invest in professional teams? Absolutely. You're seeing that every day on the MLS, NWSL, and USL side. Are governments investing in making soccer more accessible in their communities? Every week, new communities across the country are opening up new soccer facilities, whether they're big, soccer complexes or sort of small fields or spaces to play in denser areas. Soccer in schools are expanding rapidly, thanks to school districts investing in soccer as an incredibly accessible sport, very high ROI to achieve health outcomes and positive community outcomes. So as we think about sort of investment, we take a very broad lens on that, and it's something that across the board we're seeing growth, and more growth.
That's U.S. Soccer Federation CEO and Secretary General J.T. Batson speaking with our own Vanessa Perdomo. Soccer fans, make sure you subscribe now to the Bloomberg Business of Sports on your favorite podcast platform. Vanessa will be having conversations with some of the biggest names in soccer as we anticipate the U.S. hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Never miss a conversation with an athlete who would take the field or an executive or stakeholder helping to make it happen behind the scenes. Up next, we turn to the world of basketball and how Toronto Raptors Vice Chairman and President Masai Ujiri put it all together. I'm Michael Barr, and you are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, joined now by Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly. Masai Ujiri is vice chairman and president of the NBA's Toronto Raptors, but basketball runs even deeper for him than that. He's co-founder of Giants of Africa, an initiative that uses the sport to empower young people in Africa. Here now to talk with us about Giants of Africa, the state of the sport, the NBA, and more is Mr. Ujiri. Masai, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jason. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, Michael, I'm so excited that Masai is here. I mean, this is a guy I've gotten to know over the last couple of years, and his impact on the sport of basketball globally is massive. As you know, you and I have talked about this, and Masai, we're so happy to have you here. We're on the eve of the finals as we talk. How do you sum up this season in terms of the business of the NBA?
I think it might have started slow, but I think Adam Silver has done an incredible job in creating parity in this league. We see what the finals is, and we saw a competitive playoffs, very fun to watch. And now we have two small market teams playing in the finals.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting.
You've got a busy schedule coming up because you got to get ready for the NBA draft. Now, you don't have to tell anybody, man. You in fact, you can just tell us and keep it in here. Are you guys looking at LJ Cryer, man? Because he looks good. You don't have to say anything. Just give me that wink. That's all I know.
I'll get you to scout him.
This goes to sort of the broader question, too, of sort of the talent in the NBA right now. You're a businessman at heart. Like, as you look around the sort of global talent pool, like, what are you seeing out there in terms of, the players that are developing, where they're coming from? The Raptors, under your leadership, really have become a sort of a global team, which sort of speaks to this broader sort of macro trend. What are you seeing in terms of global talent right now?
Talent is everywhere because of not only the genius of the NBA being a global brand, and it's extended its wings into all corners of the world, Africa, Asia, South America, and Europe. And also because of this handset we carry everywhere, the game is so attainable for every young kid around the world. So it's a chance for kids to play. I always tell people my son learned how to do the step back. He wasn't coached to do it. He just saw it,
right.
Like watching all these guys on the screen. But you look at the landscape of the NBA, there's players in America, players in Europe, players in Africa, everybody making impact. It's a time in the league where, we really have to think about the young players coming up because at some point there's going to be a change of guard,
right.
And I think the league is set up well with a really good young players.
Part of what you've done, Masai, through Giants of Africa is create this incredible pipeline for talent on the court, off the court, etc. Tell us about Giants of Africa, sort of the state of play, 22 years, I believe, into it, big festival coming up, but help our listeners understand what Giants of Africa is.
We started a basketball camp 22 years ago, and it was started just from the basic teaching of kids, basic fundamentals of the game. 50 kids in Nigeria. I modeled it out of Basketball Without Borders with the NBA, and I was the director of Basketball Without Borders, and I saw what the NBA was doing in South Africa, bringing all these kids together, and I said I'll start doing that in my own country, Nigeria, and started to grow beyond. I took it to my mom's country, Kenya. It started to increase not only in countries, but we started thinking all the things we're preaching, like with kids, with life skills, being honest, being on time, empowering women, and now start talking about women. And I'm like, okay, I'm not doing those things that empower women, which is doing a women's camp too. So I introduced girls camp, and it became a boys and girls camp, which it really took off. Mm-hmm. And then we started going into tough areas in the continent, kids that don't have that much opportunity, slums, refugee camps, war-torn areas, and really started to affect maybe some of those kids that don't have as much opportunity growing,
I think one of the neatest things that you have ever done, you guys won the championship, Toronto Raptors, in 2019. Mm-hmm. You took the Larry O'Brien Trophy to Africa to show the kids there is like, hey, this is what we played for. And now you've developed almost, more than 100 basketball courts in Africa. Tell us more about that.
The camps eventually started to get bigger. As it started to get bigger and we traveled to other countries, started growing in countries, you start to discover that infrastructure becomes a problem. Where are the kids playing? Potholed courts, like gyms that are not well kept. And it became a priority for me, to start seeing that these kids playing with better courts, better grounds, better facilities, and we provide balls. Thank you to Nike and all the sponsors that we've had to give these kids some of the kit that they've needed to play the game. And we made a pledge to build 100 courts around the continent, and that became real. We started doing it, and we're growing with, I think, almost at 40 courts now. We build them well, we secure them, we make sure there are programs running on these courts, which is important. Women are included, the community is included, schools are included. It took off, and I thank the NBA for having this foresight, giving me also opportunity. Working in the NBA has been a huge opportunity to go and do this. You take coaches back, there's so many aspects, that come into play here. It's all one big family. You try to grow the game all over the continent. You try to learn as much as you can. You help other youth, you help other coaches, other people, and you continue to grow. And you start to think about this ecosystem, which is educational, in my opinion, to get these kids thinking as sports, even broader. Sports as a business, sports as, you don't only see it in Africa as recreation and competition. You can also see it as a business and a career path for you. Just look at me.
You're right.
Yes, I didn't play in the NBA. I wasn't good enough to even play in high division in Europe, but my scouting background, business, all those things, really gave me this opportunity to be sitting down here and talking to you here at Bloomberg.
Yeah.
You haven't seen me play basketball. I looked like I was playing golf, but that's another story.
I was going to tell you, Michael, we're going to draft you. I'm more looking at you.
So Michael, I had a chance, a couple years ago to go to the Giants of Africa Festival, in Kigali. They're running it back this year, Masai and his team, and so. It's an unbelievable gathering of, youth teams from across the continent, convening there in Rwanda. You're doing it again, Masai, this coming year. How do you level that up? I mean, it was such an amazing scene. I remember so vividly, like being at the closing concert with Davido and Tyla. I mean, and then there was all this basketball happening as well. But the festival nature of it speaks to, I think, this ecosystem that you're talking about that's created around sport. So tell us about this version of the festival and what you're expecting and what the big goals are.
we were celebrating 20 years 2 years ago, Jason, when we were there, and it was a big thing that we thought about. How do we make the 20th year really big? It was supposed to be a one-off.
Right.
Yeah, and I always go by what Coach Casey, Dwayne Casey always says, when you do something good, he always says you told on yourself. That means you can do it again. So we told on ourselves, and I wasn't planning to do it, like for many years to come, but it was so good, to have about 300 kids come together, from all parts of the world. We want to redefine what Africa is, and one of the themes of that is how does Africa become borderless? And it starts with our youth. Sometimes people don't understand that Africa is a continent, not a country. So different countries have their rules and regulations, and sometimes that creates some sort of boundaries, and how do we bring it together? The cultures, the languages, the food, it's all unique, but it can all come together in some kind of way. And that's what the festival did, bringing these kids together.
Well, on the 15th anniversary, it was spectacular. You had former President Barack Obama there. It helped to kick off this festival. That had to be a special treat.
Yeah, so having him, we went to Allego and we built one of our first courts and opened it with President Obama. We built it for Auma Obama in South Iku and in Kenya, and it's always incredible to have to work with him. I've worked with him for a while. He's a dear friend and mentor, and he's just so knowledgeable about the world, and loves basketball.
He's a hooper. He's a serious hooper.
No, he's he really should own a team.
Yeah,
yeah. He's very you never see somebody that knows so much about a lot of things, and does it so humbly, but. Having him being part of Giants of Africa will always be special to us, and it's one of those reasons we're always trying to do even more.
I know the sands of the hourglass are against us, but I do want to ask one question before we wrap up. And Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, just recently affirmed that they are going to start a new tournament, the NBA versus the world. They're going to scrap the mini tournament that they had around in the All-Star break. Your thoughts about that?
He's always been known for being very creative, and open-minded. I've known him for 22, how many years now, being in this business, and that's how his mind works. But it's also the minds of everybody he listens to, which is the whole league and the whole world in some kind of way, and his team. And I think I'll always try to get this league right, and I think I'm open for ideas, because you have to innovate in this league.
Right.
Yes, you have to figure out what history is and what you want to carry on for a long time, but you also have to innovate and make things spicy in our league, as the NBA is a drama league, and we love it, and that's why it always rises to the occasion, and I'm incredibly grateful to be a part of it.
Thanks to Masai Ujiri for joining us. He, of course, is vice chairman and president of the Toronto Raptors and co-founder of Giants of Africa. And most importantly, thank you as well to Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent and friend of the show, Jason Kelly, for joining us for that special conversation. And that does it for this edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports. For my colleagues, Vanessa Perdomo, Damian Sassower, and Jason Kelly, I'm Michael Barr. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big old money in the world of sports. And don't forget to catch our podcast on all your podcast platforms. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.